Hi again. Welcome back to Financial Advice with Tim, Part 2. The financial advice show that's worth every penny you paid for it. Back in Part 1, we talked about some ways that people get into financial problems, and I highlighted rent-to-own centers, payday lenders, check cashing places, and car title loans. Long story short, don't ever do it no matter what. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about bill collectors. You have done something, you cannot pay the bill on something, and eventually it goes to the bill collectors. Now, just for my example today, let's say you got a computer from Apple Computer. I'm using them as an example because I don't like Apple Computer. They design the products here in America, but they send the jobs overseas to China. They store billions and billions of dollars overseas, so they don't have to pay taxes on it. So Apple is one of the big evil corporations like Walmart. So in today's example, you have a $1,000 Apple computer that you cannot pay the bill on. You may want to pay the bill, but hey, you have this many bills and this much paycheck, and there's no way to make the math work. Something has to give. Rent and food is just a little bit more important than giving a few dollars every month to some huge evil corporation who can afford to go without. Now, if you get behind on your payments right away to Apple and their collections department, they'll carry it for a little while, a few months, and then they'll write it off as what they call a bad debt. Now, already you have a mark on your credit score because of this. But then, here's the part that happens. This is a really bad part. People called debt buyers will come along and they will buy your debt from Apple Computer. They'll say, Apple, this guy owes you $1,000. We'll give you $50 for it. And Apple would rather have that $50 than nothing. So, okay, now it is no longer Apple's debt. If you pay any money on this amount of this bill, it doesn't go to Apple. It goes to the debt buyer. Some fly-by-night operation. They buy a bunch of debt for pennies on the dollar, and they set about calling you and harassing you to collect the money. And all the money you pay does not go to Apple. It goes to that debt buyer. You're making him rich. And the original bill isn't getting paid. Apple got their $50. The matter is closed as far as they're concerned. Anything you pay makes this fly-by-night debt buyer rich. And that I don't like, so don't even do that. Now, when you get they get your information, they're going to try to be really intimidating on the phone with you, and you have to be prepared for this. They're going to call you up and they're going to say, are you such and such name and address and date of birth and social security number, and you owe this much money to Apple Computer. You owe them $1,000. You haven't paid. We are here to set up payment arrangements for you to pay this bill. And now, they know my name and my address and everything, and you're all freaked out because they hit you with so much information so fast, so hard. You're not even thinking right. Now, way back, and I'm talking about 2002, 2003, some of my early experiences with bills getting behind. It was a little intimidating at first. You have to experience some of these things to know how to handle it. And they would tell me this stuff. Yes, I know I have an overdue bill, and at some point, all you can say is, well, I would say like, money is just really bad for me right now, and I just can't make any payments. Well, money at that time was never good for me. I was living on my own, working whatever jobs I could, paying my own bills all the way, kind of, getting by paycheck to paycheck under the best case scenario. Any extra money to pay any extra bills? That was never going to happen. Didn't matter if I wanted to pay the bill or not. The money just was not there. So where are you going to pay it from, huh? Pay it out of thin air? That never worked. So, I remember the first few times I had some go-arounds with these bill collectors. I'd get all worried and hyper about the whole thing. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to ruin your credit report. Yeah, well, I didn't really realize it at the time, but the debt is already on the credit report. So, whatever. Damage has already been done. And they would really go out of their way and say, well, is there anyone you can borrow the money from? Well, nobody in their right mind who knows me will let me borrow money because they know my situation. No. So, no, nobody is going to lend me money for this. And even if they did, then I'd have to pay them back. And where's that money going to come from? That'd be someone I know. So that's even worse. So I would have to just, okay, maybe next month, and that never really worked out too well either. I had some really good arguments with some of these guys. They would get to screaming at me on the phone and like, be a man, pay your bill, pay your bill. It's not a question about being a man or not. It's a question about here's the bills, here's the paycheck. And I would actually have conversations where they would tell me, you don't pay your rent, pay us the money for you're going to spend on your rent. I say, okay, let me get this straight. I'm in Pennsylvania. It's December. You're telling me what I should do to, quote unquote, be a man is to not pay my rent, get kicked out of my apartment, be sitting on the sidewalk or in my car, which will be probably out of gas from running the heater, but I can feel good because I paid you money for that debt, and that money isn't even going to Apple to pay the original bill. It's going to you to make you rich, and you get your sales commission from collecting the money. Is that what you're telling me? That is your idea of being a man or whatever? Yeah, that was always some really interesting conversations on the phone. I'm going to tell you, the most interesting guy I had to talk to for a bill collector, this was a few years later, like around 2008, 2009. They were still trying to harp on me from some bill from years ago. So I already decided, I'm over this thing. It ain't going to happen. So I was a hardcore World of Warcraft player at the time. And he would call me up about every three or 4 weeks or so. And I would just kind of, hey, how you doing? Yeah, I remember you. And I would just talk about whatever nonsense. I would just steer the conversation into, hey, guess what I did in World of Warcraft today? It'd be like a half an hour conversation where nothing about money was even discussed because that wasn't going to happen. And one of the most satisfying phone conversations I ever had with this guy was in very early 2009 when I was getting ready to move to Los Angeles for the first time. I actually gave him the courtesy of letting him know. I told him on the phone, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be moving away from this apartment soon. And so within a couple of weeks, you're not going to be able to reach me on this phone number anymore. And he said to me, we'll find you. And I said to him, well, maybe you will, and maybe you won't. But even if you do, you still ain't going to get no money. So the message was delivered. And ultimately, they never did find me or call me back. But now, for today, dealing with these bill collectors. Let me save you a whole lot of time and hassle here. If you have a bill, doesn't matter how the bill was created, but now you have this bill, and it is an extra bill. Like you have rent, food, fuel, electric, internet. That's taking up the entire paycheck. You've got kids and more food and stuff there. There ain't nowhere in the world you can make a payment on some extra bill, that would, enrich some fly-by-night debt buyer, who's leeching off your money to make himself rich. The money isn't even going to Apple Computer. If you can't pay the bill and whatever, I'm gonna hit a bad mark on my credit report because of this. The damage has been done. If I gave you all the money I have, and paid the bill off, that bad mark would still be there. So what you have to do is total blockade, complete wall. Here's what happens. When the debt collector calls you about, hey, you owe this money for this bill. And they'll say, is this your name? Is this your social security? Is this your date of birth? Whatever. You can say yes to that. But when it comes to the bill itself, here's what you got to do. You never, ever, in any way, shape, or form, admit that the bill is legitimate, valid, and yours. You must always say the same thing, no matter what they tell you or try to trick you into admitting to. I don't know where this bill came from. It's not mine. I never made it, never heard of it. I am not responsible for this debt. Those are the things you must always say, because if you make let's just say, for example, it's 2 years after you got the Apple computer and this whole debt crisis began. In 7 years, the bad debt falls off your credit report and it's like it never happened. Don't ask me how I know these things. I have some life experience. But anyhow, it's 2 years later. You're 2 years into your 7 years of waiting for this debt to time out and fall off your credit report. If you say anything like, yes, I'm responsible for this debt, or yes, I will make a payment arrangement, or if you make a payment of any amount of money, you know what happens? Cha-ching! 7-year clock restarts. So your 7 years begins now because you just restarted the whole thing. And that's what you don't want to do. Let me see a comment here. John Martin, do you mean tell lies, Tim? Well, let's not call it lies in this situation. Let's call it optimizing the facts for the most favorable outcome to you. How about that? Does that sound better? Lies is such a harsh word. Let me see. Things to avoid. R.A. Cantrell. Yeah, you're right. A lot of those fancy things like, cable TV, convenience stores, expensive items, new cars all the time. That's right. I've seen a lot of people who cannot afford fancy things to be in, expensive stuff. Like, you do not need the brand new iPhone every year. Trust me, you do not. And I'm going to have an episode later on about cell phones, and we'll get to that then. But yeah, does that sound good, John Martin? Like politicians do. You're right. Yeah, they say in a certain way. It's the same thing, but it's different. So anyhow, when you're dealing with these bill collectors, you must never admit the debt is yours, because you're going to screw yourself up so bad if you do that. Because the damage has been done, and they may not believe you. They may keep calling you and having other people tell you the same thing or give you to a different person. They will sell your bad debt to another debt collection agency. And then that person will be calling you up and saying, we have your information. This is your name, your social, your security number, your address. You owe this much money to Apple Computer. We're here to collect the bill. Again, doesn't matter if they shift it through 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever debt collection agencies. Block wall, brick wall. You have to stick to your story and never change it. I don't know nothing about this. Not my debt. I'm not responsible for it. I don't know how it got there, but not me. It's not mine. Because with any one of those debt collectors along the way, if you say anything to any of them, yes, it's my bill. Yes, I'm responsible. I'll make a payment arrangement. Ding! 7-year clock restarts. Just like that. That's all they need to hear. And they'll be recording it. They'll be recording it. And they will just say, he admitted it was his debt. So you don't want to do that. Now, I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. In a perfect world, I wouldn't have any bills because they would all have been paid in cash at the time of purchase. But we don't live in a perfect world, do we? So you got to do what you got to do to get by. And this is some tips to make your life a little bit easier and go on. John Martin, have I caught up now? Oh yeah, my credit's been good for years now. Quite a while. I've caught up. Well, caught up in a sense. Some bills were paid, some bills timed out, but for all intents and purposes, yes, I'm totally caught up now. I got a good credit score now. I keep an eye on it. I maintain it, and that's I told you before in the last episode. I'll tell you again. Get a Credit Karma account. It doesn't hurt anything. I've had mine for years, like maybe, I don't know, about 12 years now at least. Get a Credit Karma account for yourself. Put your information in, and you can watch how things change over time for you. It's their scoring model. It may not always be the same number that you get for your credit rating as like a bank or a mortgage company or a car lender will give you for their credit scoring number, but it's a number you can compare over time. It'll show you what they think is on your credit report and how much is owed for each certain bill. So I have found things on mine that weren't my bill. And I had to call a few people and say, hey, this ain't my bill. It really isn't. I don't know what this is on here for. And that helped me right there. So when it comes time to deal with these debt collectors, remember, they're like the seedy underworld of the whole money industry here. They are not going to give the money you pay them to Apple Computer. They're keeping it all for themselves. They thought to themselves, okay, I can buy this $1,000 debt from Apple for $50, and I'll get this guy to pay me. Yeah? Well, hey, no one forced you to buy my debt. You took your own risk. You made your own choice. That's your mistake. Because if I couldn't pay Apple, what makes you think I'm going to pay you? Debt. I don't know how people can work for a debt collector. Do they? Yeah, I know they may need a job doing something, fine, but all the aggravation and stress you're causing people who already got enough problems? Well, I couldn't do it myself. And I suppose there's some people who love doing that kind of thing, but it ain't me. So now, remember all these things. Rewatch this video. Watch other YouTube videos about how to handle debt collectors. And remember, you cannot ever say it's your bill, because that just sets you back whatever amount of time you already had accumulated towards your 7-year timeout. So try to get better education, get better job skills, create less bills for yourself in the first place. That's the first step to helping yourself out. Don't have the bills to begin with. But you can't watch TV these days and do that because, hey, you have to have the latest clothes and styles and fashion and car and cell phones and whatever. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because that's not good for the economy. Yeah, but it sure does a number on your finances. All right, well, that's all for this episode. Bill collectors. They're a real pain, but the more you know about them ahead of time, the easier your time dealing with them is going to be. See you in the next episode. Why do I say see ya? I can't see you. I see this little camera lens right here. You see me, but all I see is this right here. All right, whatever. Okay, and broadcast once, twice. Thank you.